So hi guys, we are good to start. I welcome all the attendees and the panelists for World 2.0 Reset webinar series of Inspire Ind. Today we're going to talk about Indian education system. So Indian education system has always been talked about as the most robust system in the world, and we had been dwelling a lot in terms of education and its development in the last many years. But this pandemic, COVID-19, has changed the world altogether. The entire media and the report says that there is a new reset button that has been pressed. In this new reset button, the economy has changed. The jobs, the processes, the formats has changed. Are we prepared for that? Maybe yes, maybe no. The pretty strong answer is that we are one of the strongest countries IMF claims to be in this situation. So there is something right, which is as an ingredient being inculcated in this economy. But there is a lot to be changed yet. Working on Zoom, we were not prepared for. Majorities were not. Social distancing was not our habit. In a density of 100 crore population, I don't think we can imagine social distancing at large. Facebook has launched shops virtually today, which has gone live. But 90% of the population, they are ignorant to the technologies. Many schools have gone live with Zoom classes and Zoom sessions. The higher class, yes, is enjoying it, but there's a great amount of lower class where parents are not getting involved. Technology is not handy. They're struggling for their survival at this time. So I want all the panelists who represents the senior most and the best education system of India to throw some light, and let's talk about this anxiety in detail. So today on the panel, we have Dr. Sandeep Sancheti. Welcome, Dr. Sandeep. Dr. Sandeep Sancheti is Vice Chancellor SRM ISC. He is immediate past president of Indian Universities AIU. Moving next, we have Dr. R. Raman, Director SIBM Pune. Dr. Raman had been teaching information technology and process management from a decade now. His research journals are widely published internationally. His research journals are published internationally. Then we have Director ITM. Dr. Lakshmi Mohan had been conferred with many awards, Best Emerging Director Awards, and many more. And then we have Jay, representation of the scholars and educationists from India. And lastly, we have Rolda, representing as trustee and director Globes Business School. So welcome you all again, and let's start with the session with Jyoti. And anxiety at this time.
Hello, can I address now?
Yes, sure.
Okay, yeah, because voice was a little broken. So good evening, everyone. Very happy to be part of this webinar. Friends, we all know the context why we are meeting today and what we are discussing today. There were few points posed by the moderator, Mr. Manoj, and I'd like to reflect on that to begin with. Number one, are we ready for change? I would say human beings in general resist the change. Anyone tendency is to resist the change, and that is what is true. We are doing what we are doing with reluctance, but we know that we need to survive, and therefore we are changing. So in that sense, COVID is both bad and good. Good because it's making us change. Let's accept what is that change which is happening. The change which is happening to us is the intrusion of technology in education. Education was probably one of the poorest in terms of adopting technology, whereas industry and various other sectors were probably more stronger. Industry talked about Industry 4.0 much earlier than Education 4.0. I'm pretty sure most of us still don't know what Education 4.0 is, though we have started talking about it. So this technological intervention because of the COVID is going to make us go in a slightly different direction. And my overall take for education would be, would education come out good out of this or bad out of this, or would it be hurt, or would it be shining? My answer is it's probably going to shine, because there are certain aspects which we were not dealing with, we were not covering, we were not very responsive. And therefore, these changes will come, and therefore the shine will be better. Let me tell you, this webinar technique or any presentation which we are doing right now, or any examination which we are doing right now, probably were there for last 5 years also. But how many of us were seriously looking at those options? We probably laughed at it. How can you do online examinations? How can you do the proctored examinations like that? But let's accept the fact that even the conventional examinations suffer from all those ills which a proctored examination would actually eventually suffer. So the point is, we have to change our nature. We have to make sure that we are trying to do good to ourselves, and in the process, we are trying to do good to the nation and the entire world also. If that is the mandate, I think any technology will survive, it will do good. For me, one big statement I'd like to make, and you did reflect on that, Manoj. You said that many people cannot afford. I can ask the same question to entire audience 20 years back, 15 years back, maybe 10 years back. Could you have afforded a mobile which you're affording now? Would the mobile had reached 100 million population kind of a thing which we are talking about? So the point is, when technology comes, the cost goes down only slowly, gradually, sometimes exponentially also. So we need not bother about the cost and the affordability. We still know that from the day mobile has come, or 3G, 4G, or whatever G has come, the services are constantly improving. The call drops may be getting less, bandwidths becoming more, the cost becoming less, the mobile becomes affordable, large number of mobiles are smart. And that is the power of technology. That technology, once it makes an inroads, acceptability, I think it makes a big correction in everything which we are trying to do. So my take here is, whether it is my teaching learning, whether it is my examinations, whether it is going to be my internships, or whether it is going to be anything in my mindset, will change. Let me give you a counter example why digital world will survive. Today, we don't get to hear Lata Mangeshkar's voice in an analog mode. That analog mode will be the real mode in which she sings. But all of us get a digital mode. Digital world has taken over everything in this world right now in terms of doing. So digital has to be accepted. Let's not think it's something new. It is something which is an amalgamation of various formats, whether it is my sound, whether it is my voice, whether it is my paper, picture, video, everything comes in the same format. So digital is something which is unifying everything, making it more easier for us to accept. And that is what is now driving the technology of education also. So I would believe that it will come out good, it will come out positive also. And we have to give it some time to settle down, some time to be getting accepted. None of the technologies in this world, when the cars came, the bullock carts were, pushed out and questions were raised. Same thing happens with many other things. So this is a question which we are raising, but the answer is, in long run, is going to be very, very good and positive. More student centricity will come because of the technology is my answer. Right now, it is the teacher centricity or the institute centricity which is driving it. Thank you. Manojji, you are muted.
Thank you, Dr. Sandeep. You started with a very positive note that yes, education will shine.
Yes.
Yes, it has to. Because of the survival, whenever such time comes, people move to education more, that becomes a more preferred choice because everybody needs to get prepared. But when you say education will shine, what are the ways that it's going to shine further? What is the new adaptations that's going to happen? Because right now, I went through an article recently that said, because of the drop of education and online studies, there is a lot of mental wellness getting questioned for the students at home. Do you think this can be addressed and this can become a new normal norm?
Look, mental wellness has much to do with the way you work, way you learn. At no point of time we are saying digital will take over everything. Digital will make an intrusion into teaching, learning, examinations, and everything. For example, you'll find out that the project works, the teaching, learning will still maybe 30, 40, 50%, depending upon the institution, will be in the connect mode or in the physical mode. No one is overruling that. And that's why a lot of people use the term blended mode. I also use it very strongly. I can call it very hybrid mode also. Hybrid mode will be much more anything which a teacher would like to do depending upon the course which is there. And therefore, we are not going to put a mental stress on them. In fact, mental stress is when that if I miss my class by 5 minutes, I lose attendance, I lose subject, and I lose my cool also. But here, if I see a program like this, 5-minute deferred in time, hell is not going to fall, nothing is going to change actually in this case, and therefore I have a better control. So imagine this technology called digital has a potential to make the student's life to learn anything, anytime, anywhere. It will be any mode, multimodal, basically DTH or webinars or MIT courseware or MOOCs or my own teacher in a deferred online mode. So anytime, anywhere, any mode, any language, anything. And forget about that learning only. Even the examination for me, and I'm a strong advocate of all these things, I've been writing about these things very strongly, is that we will have examinations which will be, why only teaching, learning in the group? Examinations will be in group. Say if 7 of us can sit together and appear in this examination, what we are talking about right now is nothing but an examination of our thoughts. And so 7 of us are collaborating to share that. Examinations will happen like that. So there'll be newer opportunities. Let's forget about something old in the life. It has survived for long centuries. It has survived. What we were doing as a controlled examination, secret examinations, all that was probably 200 years old. Today, it is a time for open book examination system. The question you have asked me is not from the book. Question you have asked me is from what I have to answer from my life, what I know. It's an open book examination. And if I don't know the answer, I can seek the answer from somewhere and give it to you. That is an open book. So the moment a student graduates, he appears in a live called open book examination system. So examination will be on demand. Examination will be open book. Examination will be based on their timing and choices. Examinations will be group examinations. So what I'm saying is there is nothing which is prohibiting what we call that you cannot come out of your shell called your office, your room, or your workspace in the house. No, you will do all those things. Tell me the animation and gamification can happen much more easier in this particular method, which cannot happen in the class. And the impact of it in terms of teaching, learning is very high. You can ask any youngster, not me, I'm not qualified to make that statement. Youngsters will tell you that how easily they learn all these things. So technology has its beauty, but by no means education 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 is going to go away, though education 4.0 is going to come in. All will coexist. In Hindi, if we say, abhi hame ghoda gaadi bhi chahiyega, abhi hame scooter bhi chahiyega, and we'll need the car also, and of course we'll need the personal aircrafts also going in future. So everything will coexist. That is my take. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sandeep. Dr. Raman, Dr. Sandeep started with education is gonna shine now. Dr. Sandeep said it's a time where beyond boundaries, education is gonna happen. He said no more infra will become a limitation. We can sit anywhere and we can still study in a group. We can give examinations in a group, not being in a group though. So you coming from an IT strong background, teaching IT to students, how do you think is the impact gonna be? Isn't it 180-degree curve that we're gonna talk about? Are we really aware about the change that's going to happen? Or it's just a guesswork that we are trying to build upon and to learn the change yet? Can we have your views, please?
Okay. So this change basically came all of a sudden, okay? That's the first thing. Now we are forced to go with this and hence we are going with it. If there was no lockdown, then possibly this would not have happened. So it came all of a sudden. The government told you can't get out of your houses and things has to go on. And hence this entire business of online teaching learning started. If it was not so, possibly we would not have looked at it at all. So it came by force. That's the first thing. Since it came by force, there is reluctance. We try to find how to go about this situation on hand, and we find ways and means using Google Hangouts, Zoom 40 minutes extended to a lot of other, to a longer time, and all these people are experimenting it. Will this go on? Let me go to that first. Okay, will this continue? The answer is it will continue for sure, because we have now seen how it can work. But how much of it will continue is a question which the clients have to answer. In my case, or any other educational institution case, I'd say the clients are the corporates who are going to hire the students. Okay, if they say that's perfectly fine with us, let the student take up any course online, you can start giving degrees and diplomas online, we still respect it and we hire them, this will flourish. Right? Why was the Coursera and edX not flourishing so much in India? The reason for it is, if you go on flash telling I've done something on a Coursera, I've done possibly 50 courses and I got something here, they were not actually acknowledging it. I would say majority of them, still 10% of them were looking at what content you have, but still there is a kind of a system in place, there is a governance in place. So all these governance mechanism made my clients, who are the corporates, not really look at seriously this online business. Hence people were flocking to educational institution, and there was an unsaid caste system in this educational institution which still exists. You got an A tier B schools, engineering colleges, then you got a B tier, then you got a C tier, then you got the non-existential ones, and that's a fact of the case today in India. And that being the case, each had their own market to look at. Some were shooing away students, telling, hey, I can't take, okay, I have 50,000 students, but I have got only 180 seats. On the other end of the spectrum, you had people telling, can you come and join me, please, because I got 180 seats. So this has been a spectrum in India that has been operating for quite some time, at least 2 decades now. And that, according to me, might change with some policies coming in place. Wherein, for example, if a B school can take only 180 students, it was shooing away, say, 45,000 students and 46,000 students. If they are ready to operate, they can possibly take more. So those people who are shooed away were not the bad ones. So if I had 180 students, I'm talking from an SIBM point of view, it doesn't mean that the other students were bad, but I couldn't accommodate. Why? Because I had my constraints. So from 180, if I'm going to go Zoom to 18,000, what happens? It will affect all the others in the spectrum. Those who are getting into the other B schools were also now will get into this particular segment, which will take a hit. Okay, that is the first thing. But if that hit has to happen, the government and my client, which is my customers who are my corporate, start accepting that I do accept that a degree given by online is as equivalent as an offline degree. If that change comes in, this is going to disrupt education, right? Because in place of 180, I take 180, I take 18,000, and all of them get what I'm going to give them in the class in an offline mode through a blended mode. Possibly I don't ask them to come here for a 2-year program. I say, you come once in 6 months, that's fine. I'll hire a Taj or a JW Marriott where I can house, say, 500 students at one shot and do the program. Now, if I do that, and if the corporates start accepting it, then it will disrupt education in terms of what will happen to the numbers, who will study the program, what will happen to the fees. There will be a strong change in the fee structure, because I can't charge them for my 4-star hostels, which I give with an AC and a attached bath, is not being charged now, for which I used to be charging a hostel fee, which is a bomb. Sorry to say this, because facilities come at a cost, right? So if that cost is cut off, then the cost of education will come down. And if there are people who are ready to opt that kind of mode of teaching, and if the corporates are also accepting it, it will be a game changer. If it doesn't happen, let us assume the corporates are not going to accept these degrees. And if you have regulatory mechanism will say, no, you must have ABCD in place, people can go online, cannot go online, then how will this change is a question mark. So it all depends on how the regulatory mechanisms are going to fall out for this to become a game changer, or it will be one-off, right? The first thing that I would like to tell is that there is an announcement that's coming from the finance department, not the MHRD, which says the top 100 universities can start offering courses online from 30th of May. This is an announcement that's being made by the Finance Minister of India. Now, you already have so many regulatory mechanisms here. You got an AICTE, you got an UGC. There is another body that is overarching, which is getting formed, which will subsume these two into them. Then you got a distance education council. Then there is a nursing council. Then there's a medical education council. Then you got a bar council. you got possibly 2-3 dozen regulatory mechanism which is there in India. So that being the case, will all these regulatory mechanism allow something like this to happen is first question. If that happens, then there is something big change that will happen. Else just going and having something like this is different. Second, the culture of this country should change. I would say an online education will work very well in Japan, where culturally they are trained that you be honest, ensure you don't cheat. But culturally it's been a it's been a fight in India. You kill the other person but get into an IIT here, only then I'll treat you someone as good. That's been the culture here right from kindergarten. I see sometimes parent asking, is my child being prepared for an IIT at what class 1, class 2? Why? Is that the right question to ask? But that's the kind of mentality that's been there in parents here as well. So that's a big question. So culturally it should change. We should bring in trust in the entire system. To bring in trust in the entire system, this is a great mechanism where someone is sitting and writing the exam. Tell them, boss, give it honestly. No problem. Refer Google, refer your textbook, refer whatever. But I'll ask a question in such a fashion which will test if you can possibly understand and apply what you have learned. So our examination systems can have a great reform if we are going to continue this. Else we always go with the mode that the other fellow will cheat. I'll have 3 proctors for 25 students. I'll have 5 proctors for 500 students. This has been the mentality that we have had in this education system. Now also people are telling I'll have a proctored exam. Why don't we start from trust? Okay, somewhere we have to start from trust. If you think you will have to mimic the same thing that is happening on an offline platform to an online platform using technology, you are asking, it is impossible because you got dime a dozen methods to cheat, right? Somewhere we should say we will start trusting our students. We'll start telling that, hey, look, here is a question paper. Here is Google, here is textbook, refer whatever. Here is a timer, answer it. If we start building this, then there is again a big change that can be expected in the way we are going to evaluate our students and the entire examination system. But what sadly is happening right now is we are trying to mimic the same offline examination into an online examination, telling I'll have a 5 megapixel camera, I'll have a 5 Mbps speed, I'll proctor you. How much can you do that? And the other end, the fellow will be trying to ensure that he cheats doing this. So somewhere we have to move from this doubt mode to a trust mode. Somewhere we have to go culturally change from the school levels. Then education for sure will change with the regulatory mechanism helping it to change, with my corporates ready to pick up such students, telling I am perfectly fine, I'll take up such students. If these changes come in, education will for sure change in India. If not, it's only hot air. Nothing will change. This also will pass. Will be one more kind of depression that will get in. Might be a U or a V curve. I don't know. It'll come up again and people forget. In India, people forget things very fast. So we will forget things and move on. Once you have vaccine and then vaccine, affordable vaccine, then hitting the masses of India, then till Corona 2.0 comes in or 2020 comes in, things will continue as it is. So these are my comments as far as the educational change, the technology and other parts. Thank you.
Quite insightful, Dr. Raman. For you, recommend that first there is a behavioral and cultural change to happen. Then only we can talk about any change. Yep, that's true. But I think that's a time now that we have started moving to it. There are more than 100 attendees today on a webinar to hear about a change in education. That means there is a lust or a hunger towards this kind of change already in place. The new generation has moved beyond, I think, a fear of examinations to choice of examinations. So that has come in. But there's a very important statement that you made in your explanation, that if your clients are ready to change, you know what is a change we need to do. And your clients are your corporates. So whatever corporates need is what we need to get prepared in the B schools or all the training centers across India. But do the clients know right now what to do? Or will they be able to get known to it in next 2, 3, 5, 6 months? Because 80% of the clientele or top companies across, people who absorbs maximum number of jobs, they are in a situation right now, they don't know what should be their next step. All the business plans have fallen. The new marketing, they are not prepared for. No more ATLs, no print ads, no hoardings, no outdoors. They don't know how to spend their budgets more. Everybody is doing hit and try. Somebody has gone out, started paying webinars. Somebody has gone out, started doing Facebook ads, Google ads, something. But 80% of business in India is physical business. Take an example of a big mall where, there is a rental page to a huge volume, and big brands have a, fashionable outlets out there. A lot of amount in interior has gone into. The customer does not just buy a product. He buys the entire ambience, the environment of that shop. Now, when it's online, how that environment is to be created or ambience, I don't know. So what kind of preparation in 2020 and 21 is expected, or the change that's expected, or we'll continue what is there right now till we, derive that new thing out?
Yeah, can I respond? Basically, this is a short time phase, Manoj. It's not that, you'll not have hoardings happening, you'll not have print happening. It's a short time phase. Then the phase is because, you're in a lockdown mode, and this is not going to be there forever. This will change. For sure, there will be a change that will happen to it. And business will learn from this. The only thing that has come out right now is the power of online game. So power of going online is what is being explored today. And rightly said, there are people who are actually experimenting, because this is your B school textbooks can't give any answers to the situation that you are currently in. None of the case studies that I've designed and discussed in the class can give you something like this. So there are decisions that leaders are taking, and they're moving ahead. Is it right or not? Time will tell whether it's right or not. But you'll have to take some decisions and move on and try seeing that the business goes on whatever possible. So this is a temporary phase, according to me. Once the vaccine is out, and as I told you, when the masses are going to get that vaccine, this phase will change. But those who are going to learn from this phase of the power of digital are the ones who are going to be really the change makers in any sector, right from education to any other sector for matter. But there are some people who are not going to learn from this change. Yeah, they're going to lose out on it. So answering your question, it's not like a doomsday that everything is gone and you're not going to have malls, people aren't going to go and watch movies in theaters. That's not going to happen. That's for sure. It's a short-term phase. It might be there for 4 months, 6 months. I don't know how many months, but yes, that will change as well. And we have seen such kind of pandemics hitting the world as well. 50 years back, 100 years back. Did everything change then? No, we still evolved from it. So this is, according to me, a short-term phase. 1, things will change. 2, how much? Possibly a few months from now. But those who are going to learn from this change of using the power of digital are the ones who are going to make a lot in the long run. So that's 2 cents from me.
Thank you, sir. That tells about first mover and laggard advantages that we had been talking about. One thing provokes me right now, sir, that at the background, I can see a beautiful campus of yours. In India, the education has always been pivotal to an infra provided by the colleges. If I name top 10 colleges in India from any ranking, definitely they have one of the remarkable infrastructure as well. Because for the development of a student, infra plays a very important role. Now in this online world, to whatever extent I take the scenario, 1% or 10%, as you said, the online is going to take place. There will be no infra required. There will be no millions and millions.
There will be a different infra required. You need a powerful server which can give VPN access to all your resources that you have. We have done it. No, some students sitting somewhere in Delhi, Calcutta, Chennai, Trivandrum, Bangalore are accessing my servers. I got a Bloomberg terminal, 15 of them. I've given a virtual access to them. So the requirement of infrastructure will become different. It's not the same that you got the guards and the gates and the building which makes the infra. No, that will change. So, but the physical infrastructure will still remain because you're going to go with a blended mode. That's what Dr. Sancheti also was telling. I completely subscribe to it. It will be a blended mode. So those who can afford, possibly if things go fine, those who can afford have to pay higher and experience that infrastructure. No, there are people who come to the campus. It's not only for studies. People fall in love and make their life there. Some of them find their life partners there. Possibly that will happen online right now. No, it can also happen. Right? But those people who are going to be there on that campus, live, experience that campus, it's an experience for them. It's about an experience, but that comes at a price. Those who can't afford that price might go into a digital mode. And for a digital mode, I need a different infrastructure. So I can't downplay on the infrastructure. Possibly if you're going to take an Amazon server for a year dedicated, that costs me a bomb as well. Okay, then if I'm going to go all resources online and give a VPN access to all of them, right from my Springer journals to Ebesco database to whatever I'm going to subscribe, that's going to cost me. So all that requires a new infrastructure and a high cost mechanism if I'm going to give access. So it's not that I need not have infrastructure. I need a different infrastructure and a different concept for it. So when I'm going to say, here I am a student, I am ready to come to your campus and live that experience. A is the cost. Okay, do I have any other option? Yeah, there is a B cost where you don't need to pay for that infrastructure, but another infrastructure, which is an IT infrastructure, which is A minus delta A is the cost. Why? Because you're not going to use that infrastructure. You're going to use some other infrastructure, possibly. Then comes the economies of scale. If I'm going to have a lot of students who are opting for it, one server can take possibly 100,000 people. The cost of the server comes in, which means my cost of education comes down. So provided I'll choose that option B only if my clients accept me to take them into their roles after I complete this program. One. Two, if my regulatory mechanism treats me, it's a real confusion today. We don't have a distinction between a distance education and a digital mode of education as we speak today. Where are the policies for it? Where is the governance mechanism for it? If all of them are made clear, yeah, then that infrastructure also will be built by the same institutions, and we'll have a new game changer coming in there. So that's I think I have taken a lot of time of this webinar.
Thank you, sir. But it was quite relevant as well. Dr. Lakshmi Mohan, taking it further, the discussion of Dr. Sandeep and Dr. Raman, that education is, yes, going through a change, but few months from now will determine the impact and the size of the change. For now, change is definitely required, but to what level, we are yet to evaluate. Asking from you this, if there is a change that's yet to be undermined, lot of students in thousands migrate to, best of the best colleges and countries across, even beyond India, US, UK, entire world rather. Do you think that phenomena will change as well now in a big manner?
Yeah, thanks, Manoj. All of us educationists who have assembled here today can vouch for the fact that there's a lot of change that's happening in the education sector. Let me set this with a parable where a fisherman goes boating, and there is another boat which is speeding across to his direction. The fisherman tries all means to stop the boat, but he's unable to, and the boat crashes. Both the boat crash. After some time, the fisherman, when he gains consciousness and he moves to the other boat to see what's the state of the driver there, he finds that the boat has no driver. Today, all of us are making so much of noise, or all that we are talking about is to a world which is not going to change. The scenario probably will be as bad as it is today, but then we have to change, and all of us are fishermen today. The change is happening, I think, across all sectors, across all educational institutions. The best format would be PPT change mode, which is people, process, and technology. I think all the three will come in play. In people, it would be the regulators, the teachers. Yeah, you may have a 3G, 4G, 5G, but a Guruji is a must. So that will continue, of course. So right from the teacher to the regulator to all your stakeholders, right from your vendors, your students, every one of them is already grappling with the change and trying to adapt themselves. I don't think anybody is sitting quiet and thinking everything would be fine. All of us are working towards how we can make things better for each one of us. If you look at technology, yes, blended classrooms are a must now. And I think all of us have already begun with online examinations, online classes. But what is important today is in the teaching learning, there are two things that would dominate. One is learning agility, and the second one is acquiring the 21st century skills, like the communication skills, technology trends that have changed. All these changes is something that we all need to adapt. Again, what would be very important for all educational institutions to keep in mind is 4 Bs for the students. One is the body, second is the brain, the behavior and belief. these four will be very important now because we have to build resilience. And that resilience can be built only if we are able to focus on all these four parameters, where you're able to have a healthy student in your classroom. Today, when you're thinking of, beginning your new batch, I think they've already at ITM started working on how we are going to open the campus, how we are going to have, breaks for just washing hands, how we are going to have probably a cafeteria which is going to have different timings for different batches. So I think all of us with large student strength are grappling on what kind of mode we need to operate on. So the process again has to change, and there's a lot of, I think, deliberation that's happening in all educational institutions. Of course, digital technology again is something that's that's something which teachers have to learn. It's just come all of a sudden for them. And how many of them really know to do an online class? In a classroom, to control a class is much easier, to create that fear and respect. But an online class, are we really prepared for teaching online is again a big question. And what all do the teachers need to do? Be it storytelling, be it gamification, be it polling, be it, understanding how to share a PPT while the session is on. So imagine even today, teachers are preparing themselves for that. I know that my whole team is working tirelessly. All of them are working from home, but working tirelessly towards what's the kind of change in pedagogy we need to bring in. What are those new activities that we need to bring in for the students? And now to your question on what would happen to those admissions, in foreign universities, I'm sure that there is going to be a drop. We Indian institutions can benefit out of this maybe. There'll be many students who wouldn't want to go into faraway lands and study, and probably they would, join Indian institutions. This is what I foresee. And even I think for students to move from one city to another would be a big thought process that would be happening at home, where, parents would not want to leave them at this particular situation. So we're all waiting for this crisis to end, but the change has already happened. I think all of us are fishermen, all of us need to change. We cannot expect anything around us to change. So I think that adaptability has already set in for each one of us as educationists.
Quite relevant, Dr. Lakshmi. I hope we all are fishermen, but our boats do not crash for sure. That's what I want to start with.
So here, Manoj,
I
would also like to mention here that all along we have been talking about Peter Drucker's, competitive strategy. But I think today is a time when we need to also lay stress on balancing competition and cooperation. This is something that we need to instill in every student.
Yeah, that has to be instilled. But more importantly, you raised up a very strong point out there. Body-brain belief, in which brain is only not about knowledge. But being part from one of the part of the out there, dealing with many people now, more than 50 now, the query and the question that you will see in the question answer box over here as well. The fear has grappled the minds of youngsters in a very strong manner. Everyone. And the, tendency to cope with this fear is not same for all. Someone is saying it will pass by. Someone will say it is something which is unwanted, but we have to be strong. But there are many who are mentally not prepared for this kind of change, who cannot cope up, who are not buying any theories, who cannot be, cannot be soothed up by any of your information out there because they have not gone through this kind of preparation in the past. They have not seen last pandemic. And mainly these are students. Their careers, their jobs are in, question state right now. They have spent a lot of time into education. So now when you are opening your college and you are doing a lot of, hygiene preparations, are there something preparatory being done to train them on this mental strength as well now? Because we are in a world now, this can happen anytime. Bio wars, we are reading about it. All of us are guessing, we don't know. but there is these kind of things can be more frequent now. So are we gonna prepare for that?
Definitely. I don't
Please.
think we should wait for the students to come to the campus. We have already begun online counseling for students. Uh, and this has to go on with the students. The communication should never stop. We need to keep communicating to the student that we are with you. You know, at present, for ITM Business School, this is an internship time. From April to August is when students would go on an internship. But it's so unfortunate that all the students have had to go back to their hometowns, and we had to stall all the on-field internships. Nevertheless, we have had many companies that have allowed students to work from home. So we have been able to provide most of the students a work from home opportunity. So the learning has to go on. That connect, I think, is what makes the student feel safe. We should never ever kind of get disconnected with the students. I think that's something that every educational institution has to take care. So for us, every student has a mentor, and all the faculties have to be connected with the mentees. So we have Zoom sessions with the students. We understand what they're going through. We talk to them. I think there are ways in, so although there is no face-to-face or no physical contact with the students, but still I don't think there can be any excuse for us to not connect with the students. There are any number of ways today, thanks to technology.
True, and that's really that, you know, placements are there in every college, but post placement is what is need to get more stronger now. The alumni in a real framework, you know, a guidance cell or a mental wellness cell is what we have to look forward for. Moving to Rahul Das Gupta. Rahul, you are trustee and MD Globsin Business School.
Hi, Manoj.
You are at a position of, you know, talking about what's next and what's new that we can inculcate for the newer world now. We have heard Dr. Sandeep Sancheti, Ramakrishnan, Dr. Lakshmi Mohan talking about newer infra required for the student. Dr. Raman said this infra is not easy as well, and it's not cheap as well. Dr. Lakshmi Mohan said it's that we need to get prepared for newer format of teaching now, and even for the past students, something to be done. Dr. Sandeep said we can sit anywhere in the world now and be in groups and online examination. So can we understand that how is Globsin getting prepared for this newer format altogether?
All right. Thanks a lot, Manoj, and I'm happy to share the screen with so many eminent speakers. I think what I would like to focus on talking about is, I think this was mentioned more by Dr. Sandeep in the beginning, and also touched upon by Dr. Lakshmi. I think our focus currently on our business school is to really look at the pedagogy that we are delivering today to our postgraduate students. And I think the most exciting thing, if I may say so, you know, I'm trying to look at it positively. The most exciting thing about what we are going through today is that we will finally be able to move to a learner-centric model of delivery from a teacher-centric model. Because in a learner-centric model, you know, you have the learner who is in the center and the facilitators around it to actually interact, engage, and learn collectively. Now, in order for us to move to a learner-centric model, you know, you have to look at your pedagogy, you have to look at your structure. You know, we all, I'm sure, have heard of the famous book on by Shrikant Datarji on Rethinking the MBA, where he spoke about and I'm talking in the context of management education, particularly postgraduate, how he spoke about that any curriculum should have sort of three sections, which is the knowledge part of it, the application, which he called the doing part of it, and the behavioral part of it. So the interesting thing that one has to think about right now is, if technology is just a tool and it's not the solution, how do you use technology in these three elements of learning smartly to ensure the learner gets more out of learning the subject than he or she is getting in a traditional classroom mechanism. So when you look at, let's say, the knowledge part of things itself, you know, if you look at theories of constructivism or connectivism, you know, these are theories which are existing about how a person can learn better. You know, if you look at knowledge, for example, I was just using that as an example, you know, there's one part of knowledge which is taught by the faculty. You know, if you're using a flipped classroom, for example, you're anyway asking a student to be prepared and to come to the class so that you can have a deliberation which is more inclusive. In addition to that, there's so much of content available, whether it's on the social media, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on news. So one of the ways one can look at re-innovating on the pedagogy is to look at how even in the knowledge part of things, you can have an experiential approach. And then of course, look at application of that through your SIPs, through your life projects, through your other, placements or interaction. And of course, the being part of it, which is the interaction between the cohort. I'm sure every school has many events like we like, for example, host something called the boardroom activity where we get people to work in teams together and look at comparatives of listed companies. It's one program that we run. We run a lot of, learning programs, which are sports linked, so you use game to actually teach management theories or leadership theories. So I think that's where people get to interact with people who are different, particularly on the behavioral side. The challenge is how do you deal with people who are different than you? Dealing with people which is similar than you is easy. So if we are able to teach in a management pedagogy, both the knowledge, the application and the behavioral part, and then pick and choose where technology can be used to enhance the learning, I think that's going to be something which is the most interesting thing, that's something what we are working on. And that will take some time, but I think one of the things I have urged in other webinars as well is for institutions to start looking at that part of it, because this is the time you can reinvent it. If it was no COVID, we wouldn't have this opportunity. COVID has actually accelerated our opportunity by all of us to relook at the way we teach, not just what we teach. So I think that's where our main focus has been in the last 2 months or so. And I think, I must give credit to all the faculties and all the other stakeholders. I think we have done phenomenally well in our country. I mean, if you look at today, a large portion of our institutions are running programs online. I mean, this is only 2 months that we have been in a lockdown situation. So the wave of change has been exponential. Of course, there are going to be challenges with any change that you have. But I think the way we in India have adopted, to my mind, has been phenomenal. And I think a lot of credit goes to all institutions and stakeholders, probably because of the scenario we have all been in. But that tells you that we all can, if we want to change quite quickly and adopt. So that's the positive part of the entire experience that we have gone through in the last 2 months.
Perfect, Rahul, perfect. But I have a query, Rahul, over here, keeping
Sure.
your role in mind. And let me have it little direct, because lots of questions on the right-hand side is also pointing to the same now. In last few decades, the way education have been, promoted, if you see, you get hands to top 10 colleges brochure, and on the cover page, majority you will find about, their infra photos, their best, infra buildings that they have, vast fields that they have, classrooms the way they have done. Now the way Byju's has shown up, in their last funding, they talked about, 8 billion valuation, offering courses left, right, and center. And I think anyone and everyone accepting such platforms. And not only Byju's, there is Unacademy, and there is much more names popping up from Vedantu and all, that people are accepting this. Don't you think it's a time to rethink the entire education model altogether?
Very interesting.
The change is evident.
So I think, companies like Khan Academy, Byju's, Udemy, I think they play in a different segment, because what they're teaching is very definitional, like a definition part or a certification part of it. When you're applying, if you, for example, just flipping the question, if you ask Coursera, for example, who is now trying to really promote free education through campus partnership programs. I had a meeting with them recently. I asked them, tell me, if you don't have the campus program where you're integrating your, let's say, modules into the pedagogy of the university, right, to make them blended. If I look at the B2C market, which is students coming to you and taking online courses, what percentage of students that take an online course completed? And their figure is not more than 10%. See, our students, or in general, people are not here to gog it. They don't understand. They understand learning and jumping onto an online platform, but how many of them will successfully complete a program and also learn out of it I think is a very different data point. So I think when you are having companies like Byju's and Khan Academy, they're looking very specific certification programs. They're not looking at diploma degree programs to be given end to end online. I think that's what I meant by saying that you have to look at technology as a tool and see what element of that you want to introduce or sort of mesh into your pedagogy to make it more effective. A valuation of a Byju's cannot be compared to a traditional business school or a university because they're playing in completely two different market segments. They're not the same. To me, they're apples and oranges. However, you can partner with them. You can definitely take some of their courses, integrate into your pedagogy if you don't have the infrastructure available to speed up your go-to-market strategy. But they're not the same. They're very, very different, I feel.
Okay, Rahul, I accept that and move to now Siddharth. Siddharth, coming last to you, and I hope you have heard all.
Yes.
And as a Secretary General of FLAIR, the questions have been put to you directly, in fact, by all the speakers out here. So Dr. Sandeep mentioned multimodal. Anytime, anywhere is the new language of education. Dr. Raman said new infra. Old infra, yes, pretty much required, but there will be distinction of choice of people who want to pay a premium and not a premium. Dr. Lakshmi Mohan talked about the newer way of education. Mental wellness inculcated. Maybe programs as well. We had marketing and finance, marketing and IB. Now I think marketing and IT and finance and IT will be the must combo with all. And Rahul said about the way this integration has to happen between online and physical, but physical has to stand as it is. Asking you now, what do you see is the exact change which is yet not happening?
Thank you, Manoj, for inviting me, and I am really honored to share the panel with such eminent speakers. Most important thing which I see, of course, what Dr. Sancheti said is absolutely correct and well adopted, that it is going to be multimodal. It is going to be a fusion of online learning as well as offline learning. And also that fact which Dr. Raman mentioned about the IT part and the infrastructure in terms of IT is also very important. Here I would like to bring in one more dimension. What happens is when we were talking about industry 4.0 and education 4.0, somewhere down the line, we were trying to bring a synergy between the industry and the academia. Now let us segregate the education component which we are offering to a student. A student goes to a school where he understands the basic concepts of life. And then he goes to a higher education institution where the student is able to prepare himself or herself for the industry, for a job situation, for a professional life. So the higher education institutions are playing a very, very critical and an important role in the life cycle of a student's education. Now, I think this particular pandemic situation can be used as an opportunity for the education institutions to come forward with ways and means to understand the new industry requirement as well. You will be surprised when we talk to the senior HRs and senior people from the industry, they are talking about having less of infrastructure and more of workforce actually working from home. So do you think that this kind of a thing can be adopted into the current education ecosystem? Secondly, we have always been focusing on examinations, but somewhere down the line, it has been world proven that it is not only the examination which is going to make you a better professional in life. At the end of the day, what you are able to learn in your education institution, how you are able to implement it really is what is going to define whether you are able to see yourself as a good professional in the professional world. Very often, I would not want to demean anyone, but very often we have seen that the very high scorers who have scored really very high in the higher education institutions or at the school level are really not able to make it to the top. And whereas the dropouts are able to make it to much, much senior positions. So at the end of the day, this is an opportunity where the institutions, even the individuals, the students who are the real stakeholders of the present education ecosystem have to utilize this particular as an opportunity and turn themselves into better professionals, better skilled, and to be able to adopt to newer things. one more very important thing I would like to highlight over here is that whenever we are sailing against the tide, we always try to increase our potential. We always try to increase our speed so that we are able to cross the tide sooner and we don't get dragged back. So this is the time when the education institutions will have to come forward, which they are already doing. They may not be able to open up right now because they are themselves in a very difficult situation. They are not aware what is going to happen. Maybe it is going to happen 1 month down the line or 2 months down the line. The vaccine which we are expecting is going to come after 2 months or 6 months or 4 months. Whether the actual education ecosystem is going to open up the way it was just before the pandemic. So all these questions are there in the mind of the educationists also. But once again, having said that, this is an opportunity wherein we can actually talk about industry 5.0. If we really see, work from home was never a component in industry 4.0. It was a very, very small component. But nowadays, the education institutions should be able to address to this situation when we are able to teach the students while they are sitting at home. Somewhere down the line, we are preparing them to be able to handle a situation where they can work from home also. So it's an opportunity which it can be actually for the benefit of the students. Talking about the internships and also about the placements, I in personal capacity would want to mention this. Talking to a lot of corporates, talking to a lot of industries, there is a temporary slowdown, but the opportunities are going to be much, much bigger. In fact, the topic of today's discussion, the very fact when you talked about World Reset 2.0. So normally, you know, when you are using any electronic equipment and you press the reset button, what do we see? We see that the equipment starts performing little more faster than what it was doing before we press the reset button. So I think that this particular situation is an opportunity. The reset is certainly going to increase our speed. It will definitely be able to help us train the students better, to create better professionals, and also to have professionals who can face any challenges which may come in future in any industry scenario. I think you are
Your voice, Manoj, you're on mute.
Sorry, yeah, I was on a mute now. Siddharth, from Flair, if I ask you, what is the, next preparation or the topic or the development that we're going to look forward from the faculty side of it as well? Because it's a faculty who's going to teach and inculcate what they have students. So are those faculties prepared for this next world now?
Okay. So, it's a very interesting question. So when I will give an example. When you when you start to learn flying, first you are put on the simulation machine. You are not simply put into the aircraft. So faculty knows all the things. They have been accustomed to a particular model of teaching. And I would really want to make a comment here that the present faculty, the way they have adopted to this change is really commendable. On one side, when there was no monitoring on how the faculty is teaching, there was no intervention from the parent. The parents would not know how the faculty is teaching their child in the classroom, to a situation where the parents can actually also listen. And most of the times I have seen it happening with my friends, even within my house, that when my daughter is studying, my wife is sitting near her, or, trying to understand what the teacher is teaching and try to be judgmental. So this is where, it is a very big challenge which has come in front of our faculty members, and the way they have embraced this change is really marvelous. And in fact, when we very often say that, these are the people who are the coronavirus warriors, and these are the people who are the frontline warriors, I would want to add even our faculty members as the corona warriors, because they are the ones who are really ensuring that the learning is not stopping. They are using, I know technology is a limitation. Every house may not have that much of equipment available. Every house may not have that kind of facility available. But whatever said and done, even if they are able to make an impact, let's say 30%, I think they have won the war. So the faculty is certainly facing certain issues, but not the way they were facing from the first day. Every day, every now and then, they are improving. And now the time has come. I have attended so many sessions, and I keep on interacting. I also happen to be on a panel where we have to really assess the teaching which is being offered by the faculty members in a silent manner. So we are given access to the rooms where the faculty is teaching, and we are there to assess what kind of impact they are able to make it. And trust me, this is something which they have really learned very fast when they are able to make a lot of difference. So with that, I would want to sincerely say that hats off to the faculty members who are able to create this impact.
Yes, true, Siddharth. Faculties has always been the frontliners, and we do acknowledge them because whatever we are and wherever country stands, because of them. Thank you, Siddharth. Now, let's move to Q&A because we have already surpassed the time lot. So quickly, we'll address few questions, only the relevant ones. The rest, I will suggest all the panelists, if they can directly answer in the Q&A privately to the question seeker, that will help to shorten the time as well. So first question, Dr. Sandeep Sancheti, if I can have with you. Many of the attendees are asking about the fee refunds. So it's not about only about the new admission, but students who had been on the regular program of 3-year, 4-year, kind of time, or in fact fee reduction, not only refund, because in the blended programs, cost of the infra and the maintenance and the admin, everything goes down, and I think it's a need of the hour also. So what do you say? Does institutions are thinking about that or no, or that question is not valid altogether?
Can't comment on the institutions because none of us would have had opportunity to discuss it threadbare, that how long the impact would be and what the impact would be. But for sure, in short term, the investments have gone higher. As was being said by Dr. Raman, a lot of investment in IT, a lot of licenses. Just to give you an example, in SRM, we bought 10,000 licenses for a single software to make sure that everything which is available in the library is accessible to our students. So imagine the cost. So in short run, whenever changes happen, the cost goes up. But in long run, I already made a statement, technology has its positive impact. The mobile, which was pretty costly earlier, suddenly has become very cheap, dirt cheap and available. The energy, which was pretty costly, 7 rupees, 8 rupees, 10 rupees a unit, is now coming with solar with 2-3 rupees also. Very soon you'll see the automobile going to electronic way will also make the change and make the transportation free. So who knows what will happen to education, but for sure the changes are going to happen in this. In short run, people are looking at their localized condition. We have to see at a much higher level, not at the micro level, but at a much higher level. The institutions still have the same set of teachers. They're still doing the same set of work. They're investing more money. They're investing more time. And in fact, most of them have to invest their cost to run certain shows from their home also. So there are lots of challenges. For example, we run a hospital, medical college, a very big one, and entire cost has fallen on our heads rather than getting something from somewhere, even for hospital. We are now COVID support for the government of Tamil Nadu, and therefore we invest very heavily. So let's not think only singularly in our own way that I am not in the campus. Yes, there can be a reduction in a cost in terms of some consumables here and there, which can be passed on. So all in all, changes will happen. There was another point made by some of the panelists that some of the odd institutions, when you do the scaling up, 180 can become 18,000, Dr. Raman said, I think. And if 18,000 becomes, so obviously the cost gets shared. But what would that mean? Some of the ordinary institutions, some of the not good ones will have to close if the 18,000 has to come to one institution. So scalability and the cost and various other factors will decide what would it be in long run. Right now, I don't see an impact. The government has desired that we should try to maintain status quo, whether it is the jobs or whether it is the cost. I think one decision, obviously, most of us are going to adhere to is there will not be any escalation of the cost, even though the cost in terms of our functioning is going up. I think that's the initial take on the fee or the finance aspect.
So I think Firas and Rafat, you have got your answers. Dr. Sandeep says there will be no change of cost, or the cost has gone up. The burden is being borne by the institutions themselves. So moving to next question, Dr. Raman, from you. Work from home has become a kind of frenzy in India. Everybody, I think every one of the even speakers today has talked about work from home. In our last webinar, we had international speaker, Prashant can vouch on that. Russell Bragg from London shared that actually 20% of households are only prepared in UK for work from home. And definitely that number will go much lower in India. If I talk about geographies like Bombay, Pune, Bangalore, Delhi, all the metros, you know the sizes of the flats have gone down by each passing year. A 2 BHK from a 1200 square feet came to 800 and now it's 500 square feet, hardly any space. Sitting in your bedroom, sitting in your living room with kids around at home at the same time, cooking, cleaning, washing, all that thing happening at home. Work from home is not practically very ideal. Either that require entire change in our living standards and habits, or a newer kind of setup is there. So do you think it's really being practical that talked about that work from home is going to become an habit? TCS talking about 75% of employees will do work from home.
Okay, so answering a question, I do not know whether you're asking me to answer this question from an education perspective or a general perspective. So if you talk about Indian standards, it's so different. You got a family with about 5-6 people in a 2-bedroom hall kitchen, and the house is not prepared for work from home. That's point number one. But today, because there is no other option, people are going and forcing themselves into a work from home situation. Whether it will happen for sure across the industry, be it education or any other, the answer is no. But for IT, it might happen because the IT salaries cannot be compared to an educational institution salaries that are paid to a faculty or a staff member, right? So many of these IT guys might have a 3 or a 4-bedroom hall kitchen. I do not know, depending on which level are they going to work. So possibly they might even go and afford to take one. But as far as education is concerned, it is a big sacrifice that many of them are doing. With a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom hall kitchen, with a data connectivity on their phone, with a bare minimum laptop that they have, they are trying to go and push whatever possible from their side to ensure they keep the game going. A simple example could be an accountant of an institution who has to go and process the salaries every month, has been using Tally in his own office. Today, he has to remotely access it and get it done. And there are people finding it difficult because, again, India is a place where we say connectivity is great, but there are pockets where only some telecom providers work. In some other telecom providers don't have their connectivity there. We are a country with plethora of problems, a lot of problems there out. In spite of it, people are trying to work and ensure things keep moving. So when companies make this, okay, let me talk about a corporate. When the corporate is making such a stance, they might be going and ensuring that such facilities are created. So I do not know, I don't want to comment about it. But as far as education is concerned, pushing everything from work from home will not happen. It cannot happen as well, at least for the next 3-5 years. It's not possible. Possibly the educational institution has to open, and the classes can go on from my setup in the institution, where I can create something like a place where I have a video conferencing setup today. So similar to that, I might have several setups that I create where faculty members sit down and take classes. That can happen. But work from home in education, it's a little tough. It is right now being adopted because you don't have any other go. Hats off to all teachers, all professors there who are taking this. In fact, we have closed our semester. It's not happening right now, but a lot of schools are doing it. A lot of B schools are doing it. A lot of even teachers in the primary and the secondary schools are doing it. It's not an easy job at all. They are under stress, but they are still doing it to keep it going. So my answer cannot go on in Indian situation, especially in the education setup, as work from home forever. No, that's not possible.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Raman. Dr. Lakshmi, as Dr. Raman addressed about work from home, definitely not for education system conducive. It will happen. It is happening. Salutes to them. They are somehow salvaging and managing the time, but with time, they have to return back to normals. So do you think there is impact into the job market and education industry as a whole now? Towards upward side or a downward side either?
So if you look at the latest NASSCOM report, it says about 40% of startups have already wound up. Okay, so the situation is grim, especially for startups who have been waiting for funds to come in and then, prepare for growth. With companies that are established, there's not much of a problem. So if you look at our own situation as a business school, we have had a couple of startups who have already revoked offers. But for us, as a responsibility that we have taken on ourselves, we'll see to it that every student of ours is placed. So for an institution, I think that onus lies on every institution to take care of their students. So yes, jobs will be lesser. That's what I think is going to be the scenario. Nevertheless, we must prepare our students to be more resilient. We must also introduce entrepreneurship as a course so that students either take up becoming an entrepreneur or at least they become self-placed. So this will also, go hand in hand with the Make in India concept. And I think there will be at least some opportunity that the students will have for themselves. And they'll also be able to strengthen their own confidence. The education system has to become more robust now. I think there's a lot of challenge that we as educational institutions are going to face because we are preparing the students for the industry. Probably even the way we prepare the students has to change. We must also include something like climate change, and how is it that the students can cope with a calamity of this sort in future, if ever it comes. So we have to introduce newer technology trends because they will start working in an era. They're going to be working in an era where technology is going to be dominating. So I think all of us have to look at how we are going to shape the curriculum, bring in those changes which are essential today in order to make the students resilient, strong enough, like I again would repeat, body, brain, behavior, and belief. Make the student so strong that he believes in his strength and he's able to be on his own. That's the kind of strength that we need to build in our own systems.
Thank you, Dr. Lakshmi. Definitely has to be done, but I still want to take this question again with Rahul Dasgupta. So Rahul,
Yeah.
Question stands the same. Do you see more hiring of faculties and teachers and movement of jobs towards education industry? Or you see a lot of job cuts, reduction in the staff in this sector as well?
All right, Manoj, before I just say it, in case, and I've been cut off twice because of the cyclone, so in case I get dropped out, just bear with me, and that's my request to speak to your panelists as well. I think, the job definition is going to go through a change, and that would have gone through a change regardless of COVID or no COVID. It's just the pace of change is going to be probably much faster. There are newer things getting added. So I from my perspective, maybe there's a short-term impact in terms of what's going to happen to the startup ecosystem, as Dr. Lakshmi mentioned. Maybe there'll be a short-term impact in terms of certain offers getting extended, to the joining dates getting extended. In some cases, there could be withdrawals as well. But I mean, I look at that as a 0 to 4 months, 0 to 5 months ecosystem. I mean, challenge. I don't think in the longer run it's going to have a major impact. But having said that, when we have that period, and this is one of the things we are doing currently with our students and faculties, they have to continue learning and unlearn and relearn, unlearn and relearn. I think, agility is very important. And if that's part of your DNA as an institution, I think you can survive any pandemic. I mean, so I think like today, for example, in Calcutta, we are having storms with 150 kilometers an hour. People, I'm sure, are still working. People are still doing their things. They don't know what's going to happen at night. They don't know what's going to happen in the morning when they get up, but they're not giving up on it, right? They're still continuing to live, evolve, do whatever is necessary, and then move on. I think human beings, that's survival is so intrinsic to us. I think we'll figure that out. But if we are able to stay agile and stay relevant, I think both for faculties as well as for students, I think there'll be very exciting opportunities in the future. From a faculty perspective, I think the challenge is going to be how do you get quality faculty understanding technology as a delivery? And that's an interesting area of skill development or through FDP's learning. And I think I have seen that in my institution. I'm sure it's the same in all other institutions, that when you tell the faculty to do it, they're actually pretty good at it. And we have always assumed that they are not, but in my experience, I've felt that they have been pretty progressive, even though they are, many years older than most of us. So in terms of experience as well. So I think I'm very optimistic in the context of the kind of opportunities that are going to come about both for students and for business schools and universities in the future. I don't see that a major change. Like, for example, I'll give you one last example. So if you look at our SIPs, we had about 60 companies come and recruit all our students before the lockdown happened. We had to rechange the SIPs. It took us a month, last 1 month, 30 days to sort of reallocate them. The corporates were very nice in coming forward and giving projects to students. Nobody said, we don't know what to do. And I'm sure that's the same experience all of you would be also saying. So I think people are coming. There will be 1 or 2 cases and 1 or 2 challenges. We also have them. I'm sure they'll be there in the ecosystem. But majorly, I think things have been pretty good. And also, I think AICTE particularly has done a fantastic job in terms of easing things out for us. The kind of platforms and learning content they have made available for the students. I mean, it's been phenomenal as well. So I am pretty optimistic that things will move in the right direction in the future.
Thank you, Rahul. Definitely, I'll pass your comments to Dr. Anil and Punia ji. They'll be happy
Sure.
to know that AICTE has been acknowledged left, right, and center from all the panelists since the start.
Manoj, I must make a point here where I must mention that AICTE's Swayam, where you can have 20% online courses for the students is a big benefit for us.
Yes, and they have channels as well. You have a TV channel for Swayam, you have your courses which are free, and from the best institutions around the country. So I think, they've done a phenomenal job, I feel.
True. Under able guidance of Anil ji and Punia ji, I think they are really working quite hard. I know Mr. Anil personally, and I know his capacity to do 10 webinars a day from first day of lockdown rather, which is really acknowledgeable. Siddharth, last question to you for the session, because most of your time commitments I have crossed already. Before you start really getting angry on me, I need to put off. The question is still coming up. So Dr. Ramakrishnan tried to reply on that, Dr. Sancheti as well, but still Dr. Nagaraju, Sarita Das, Arjun Nayak, Ritu Kapoor, many of them are raising these questions again and again. So the question is, parents are not ready to accept the similar amount of fees to continue with the online format of education in this lockdown period. Because for them, they have in their mindset not prepared for the cost side of it. So what do you think should be the action from the institution side for same?
It's a very, very relevant point which you have mentioned over here. And this is a problem which is being faced by most of the institutions right now. In our personal opinion, the way we are looking at it is that it is high time when we need to educate these parents. See, at the end of the day, these parents are also working somewhere and they are also facing different kind of situation. We have to understand the contribution which the faculty is making in such difficult times. It is but obvious, as it was mentioned by Dr. Sancheti also and also by Dr. Raman, that these faculty, they have to put in extra hours. The institutions, they have to pay extra money for the licensing costs, for all the cost, and moreover the infrastructure which is already in there, already in place, that cannot be reduced. So the cost of maintaining that infrastructure and all the costs for which an institution is already committed is not going to come down. So whether the classes are happening in the campus or happening online, it is not going to make any difference as far as the cost to the institution is concerned. Now the only question that comes into the mind is that, okay, if the student is not availing the hostel, if the student doesn't have to buy the uniform, if the student doesn't have to buy the shoes, these are the only costs which are not a cost to the parent. Otherwise, all the other costs which the institutions are paying, somewhere down the line, the parents will have to understand that this needs to be paid. And once again, I would want to reiterate with the statement which I made. If we will understand that these teachers are the Corona warriors and they are putting in extra effort for our children, they are making it, they are doing their normal work. They have to prepare themselves for the online classes. Then they have to use the technology which they have not used. Then they have to take the classes. After taking the classes, they have to summarize all the things. They have to make a report and they have to send it to the management. And as pointed by one of the panelists, in some of the cases, these teachers are spending money from their own pocket in order to ensure that they are able to do all these things as per the norms of the school. So this is the time when all the consumers of education, all the stakeholders of education should understand the importance of the education institution, the costs which they are bearing in any case, and respectfully pay the fees for the ones who are already enrolled for the programs in the previous years and going to start the new semester. And see, at the end of the day, we are identified by our alma mater. So tomorrow, these are the institutions which are going to be our identity. So if in this pandemic situation, we are able to understand what is the role these institutions are playing in our life, it will be a very, very important and a progressive step from all the consumers of education. This is what I would want to say.
Thank you,
Can I
Siddharth.
also add something to this, Manojji?
Sir.
I think finance is a challenge everywhere, whether it is the industry or whether it is the medical domain, health domain, everywhere, transportation, everything is a challenge. And therefore, one cannot say that they cut down the cost of the car or cut down the cost of my medical treatment and all that I can't afford or whatever. So let's accept that the government will come out with certain schemes where these things will be taken care. But those who are rather more cost conscious, they should find institutions in the neighborhood so that their wards stay with them. The cost of hostel, the transportation, various other things will go down if possible. And even if they remain in their home, they should now be celebrating it in one sense, that if they want to study a course from Harvard or maybe IIT Bombay or IISc Bangalore, they can possibly do it sitting at their home. They don't have to go. So their cost is anyway coming down. Just harping on the component of fee is, I think, just a feeling they have in their mind. Let us understand, there would be institutions which will be possibly supported by charitable institutions. But with 1,028 universities, do you think they'll be all charitable? I think government is doing enough in terms of subsidizing the cost. But look at the cost which we others are paying for that. The fee in the central universities in government is peanuts. I think the fee is less than a charge they will spend on a one evening when they go out with family or friends. I think one should now become more realistic that those things will have to be cut down first if they have to survive in life and do something, rather than just harp on this point that, oh no, I'm not sitting in the classroom, so why should I pay? I think the effort required by a teacher for a meeting or for a class or for preparation here is much more. And let's also understand, in coming life, teaching is going to be much lesser. It's going to be learning. And you have to make sure that you pay for your learning, be it in terms of time, efforts, and finance is not the only thing. And there are lots of concepts which are changing in life. One has to change. For example, earlier it was cover the course. Now it is the concept of uncover the course. Now teacher's duty is very, very different. He has to have multitude of things to uncover the course. Earlier, the teachers, we will make the courses first and find the teachers with a lens who can teach that. Today, it has to be teachers first and then say what he can deliver best, and therefore the courses should be built around teachers. That's another thing. So there are many 180-degree shifts which are coming in our life. We should not relate everything to the cost, is my simple answer to that particular problem.
By that very strongly, sir, and I think that's what the way to look forward is. Definitely, I think a unanimous effort also need to be taken from all the institutions towards the parent to tell them, because for me also it was a lot of learning when Dr. Raman told about the servers and the costs and the licenses of the tune that you told us from SRM, 10,000 licenses. It's a huge number. So across a new cost has been coming up, which nobody is addressing. Everybody thinks it's a Zoom link that everybody takes and goes live. That's the only cost. So people aren't, I think it's ignorance that's been roaming around more. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, everyone. I once again thank all the panel on behalf of all the attendees and InspireInd. And Prashant, I think you should take over now, please.
I just like to thank, end by thanking all the panelists for being here, and all the attendees. I hope all your queries were answered, and thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Manoj. Thank you, panelists.
Thanks to all the
We would be very happy to receive the questions offline, and then try to answer it through them, because we are equally responsible, we are equally concerned, and we are equally interested to know what others would like to know from us. So we are open to that. Thank you.
Yeah. I have all the questions. I'll, whatever is not answered, I'll just mail it to you.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you all
Thank you.
once again. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Raman. Thank you, Dr. Sandeep. Thank you, Siddharth. Thank you, Rahul. Thank you, Lakshmi ji.
Thank you.
See you.